to have you all here today. Okay, so we'll make a start. Hi, I'm Victoria. As you can see, I'm part of the Croissant team. I'm here tuning in from the UK. It's really great to have you all here today. I'm really excited to introduce Sultan and Adam, the founders of Croissant. And over the next 30 minutes, we'll walk you through what we've been building. We'll show you a live demo, and we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions as we're going along, please do drop them in the chat, and we'll keep track and try to get to them at the end. There's also a giveaway that Sultan will tell you a little bit more about when he's speaking. So yeah, keep listening out for that. And with that, Sultan, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Victoria. Hi, everybody. Adam and I are coming to you live from, I'm so happy to say this, warm and sunny New York. We've had one of the longest winters ever. I've been in New York for about 20 some odd years, and I've never seen the Hudson River frozen over. And this winter, it was almost consistently frozen over. So we are finally in summer, I think. So we are very, very, very excited and happy here in New York. We're excited to show you guys what we've been working on. And Victoria mentioned a little bit of a giveaway at the end. So one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving away 5 lunches for teams that sign up to demo the product after this. So Fernanda's we're gonna send out an email, and it's gonna have all the details in it afterwards. But with that out of the way, wanted to quickly just introduce myself and Adam, and give you a little bit of just a little bit of couple of personal details about us. So I'm Zoltan. I love everything that has to do with boards in terms of sports. I surf in the summer and I snowboard in the winter. My goal is to pick up kite surfing, maybe hopefully this summer if we have the time. And I did do skateboarding, but I think I'm a little too old and fragile for that now. I like to ride in my spare time, although my spare time is limited these days because I have a little human alarm clock that wakes me up at 5:30 a.m. every morning. And lastly, I love to study history because I believe that history is, it repeats itself in a different context. So those are kind of my 3 hobbies, and I'll turn it over to Adam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adam. Let's see, I've lived in New York my entire life, but I've been to other places. I've been traveling around the world. One of my, I guess, long-term hobbies itself, I like to ride motorcycles. So I have a motorcycle I rode to work today. And also another thing I do like to do is I go hiking a lot, but also have like a little one. So it's just like, that wakes me up a little bit later than 5. But it's fun. I think being a parent is one of those things that, it's enjoyable. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. Most of the time, I build products here at Croissant. I've worked at fintech companies before, so very familiar with like the small medium business and like enterprise life cycle itself.
Absolutely. So if you find an app in the bug, this is the guy to contact, right? Awesome. Well, jumping into things, before we jump into what we've been building, I think maybe I'll take a moment to sort of reflect where we come from, right? So we've been around for, we launched in 2014 when somebody gave us a co-working map of all the co-working spaces in New York City. And you have to remember, this was a time when you would say co-working and people would look at you like you have 6 heads. And we ran a simple experiment where we put it up online and we aggregated all these spaces. And I don't know where we got a bunch of signups, and that led essentially to here, right? And over those 10 years, behavior has evolved, right? I think before we were very much, digital nomads, freelancers, but one of the things that has evolved dramatically is how companies work, right? And we believe COVID was an accelerant, not necessarily the cause, right? Like if we think about how the workforce operates now, it used to be fixed, right? And now it's more and more variable. Business cycles are faster. The AI hype is accelerating things. So it's becoming very hard for companies to say, you know what? I'm going to get an office for 20 years based on this head count, because this is going to be my hiring plan for the next 10 to 20 years. So essentially, this is our thesis, and this is what we've been working on for the last year or so, really just talking to customers and really understanding where their pain is when it comes to distributed teams and hybrid work. Go ahead and share. So a quick question for everyone before we jump in. How many of you actually know what your company spent on Workspace last month? Not necessarily what was actually budgeted, but what was actually used. And I'm talking co-working, reimbursements, offsites, drop-in, or anything along those lines. The reality is that most companies don't, right? And that's the problem. And the shift is what's happening is really around who owns the Workspace line item, right? So, and I'm throwing another question at you is, at your company, who essentially owns the Workspace program, right? The logistics, the employee experience, who owns that in your company? Is it HR? Is it finance? Is it ops? I'll take a couple of moments until you drop it into the chat. The reality is that today, no one owns it, but everyone owns it, right? And essentially what this next phase of Croissant is going to be is to fix that, right? We're shifting away from a perk, from a marketplace, and what we're essentially building is really a system to manage Workspace as a spend for companies, right? We've aligned ourselves as a company around 5 pillars, and these 5 pillars are based on what we heard from customers from all the way from companies with 10 employees all the way up to 1,000 plus. And pillar number 1, where we started from, and what we're always going to have, because this is really, really the foundation of Croissant, is our access infrastructure, right? Let's start simple. Like, what happens when someone on your team needs a workspace tomorrow, right? This is what we've all been experiencing, right? Like, you're a 120-person remote company distributed across 20 cities. People want to get back to the office, maybe not always, but want to have some sort of a hybrid setup. Or maybe you have a new hire in a new city, or someone's traveling, the team wants to meet. What happens today, right? Probably Slack messages, reimbursements, scrambling, right? We give your team instant access to workspaces globally. No contracts, no ops overhead. Everything is one invoice and one vendor, right? So if you're a distributed company with 120 people, you no longer have to manage regional relationships. You can do that all through us. But this is just the foundation. Pillar number 2 is around spend governance. Let me ask you this, right? In your company, what happens when that spend starts adding up? Is somebody keeping track of that, or all of a sudden does finance come to you and say, what is this spend? Where is this coming from, right? When you have multiple employees across multiple cities, across multiple currencies, right? Essentially what happens is there's no visibility into the spend until after the fact, and budgets become soft, overage happens, right? So with Croissant, budgets are enforced before the spend happens. And the idea is for HR to give a fair program to all their employees, for finance to be able to manage that cost, and for ops to have as little overhead as possible, right? The shift here is from tracking spend to actually controlling it. So then how do you enforce consistency across teams today? Right? Most companies we talk to, they probably have some sort of a stipend or reimbursement and a document that sits in Confluence or Notion that, you kind of dig up and dust off once in a while right before, just to either refresh it or because somebody new is coming on board and you want to send them your hybrid workspace policy, right? So how do you enforce that consistency across teams today, right? You have different managers, you have different rules, you have different behaviors. Think of it this way. You have a sales team of 20 people that are traveling constantly because they have to meet with clients, and you have a product and engineering team that needs to meet a couple of times a month, right? Chances are those 2 teams have very different needs, and you have to address those different needs with different policies, right? The sales team may need to be able to to use workspaces globally, whereas the R&D team might need to just be restricted to local, right? Because they're all about rituals and repeating those rituals. So you define that once, and Croissant enforces it everywhere automatically. Pillar 4 is vendor consolidation, right? Again, going back to the initial use case, you're fully remote. You want to give people some sort of a hybrid option, but you have to hire across, 10, 15 different countries, because we live in a world, we go where the talent is, not the other way around, right? That's another big shift that is happening, is that companies are now going to where the best talent is. They're no longer localizing into specific regions, right? And expecting talent to move there. So how many workspace vendors are you dealing with today? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? The reality is that finance teams are reconciling 10 plus vendors across different countries every month, right? We replace all of that with one contract, one invoice, and your team doesn't manage vendors anymore. They essentially manage one singular system. And this is my favorite one. And I know there's a lot of hype around AI, but then it becomes intelligence. How do you decide what workspace to invest in? How do you decide for your team that it's time to get an office? I'll give you guys a use case that's a real use case that happened recently. One of our customers used the data that we provided them to essentially figure out where they need to have a hub and spoke model. So in certain cities, they decided to go with an office where people come in, and then for the remainder of the team, they continued to use the flexible workspace options, right? So having that type of intelligence at your fingertips as finance, ops, HR, people, you're going to be able to make better decisions about not just like what your team needs, but how you want to shape that culture of coming into the office, flexible workspace. And with Croissant, you get to see exactly how your team works, where, when, and how often. And lastly, there's no such thing as a small team. There's no such thing as outgrowing or being too small for a Croissant, right? Because each of these pillars works with teams and meets them where they're at. At an early stage company, if you're 10, 20 employees, you don't want to deal with the chaos. You don't want to deal with the chaos of reimbursements, stipends. Okay, did they use it? Did they not use it? What you want to give people simply access with little admin overhead, access without the chaos. As you start to scale, you need to have more visibility, and you need to have policy consistency, right? Because you need to give a fair program to all employees. And then when you start to become more enterprise level, 1,000 plus, then you start getting into governance at scale. So how does that workspace program look for when you have 5,000 employees across 30, 40 different countries, right? Some of them are made up of headquarters, others are made up of flex. So being able to govern that across globally is a very powerful thing. And with that, I'm very excited to turn it over to Adam to kind of give you a sneak peek about how we're starting to build this together. This is really just the beginning for us, and we're very excited about where we're going. And I'll turn it over to you and take it away.
Well, thank you, Zoltan. Cool. So before I jump into the product demo itself, I want us to reiterate, like when a company commits to distributed work, whether that's remote first, flex, they suddenly need to manage like workspace like they manage software licenses. You need control, you need spend visibility, you need policy enforcement. What we've been building Croissant, not a co-working directory, not a perk, distributed work infrastructure, the layer between people and the places they work. So today we're going to kind of go through some product demos. So the first one's going to be collaboration. Second one is going to be how teams organize their structure at Croissant, team policies, and also team insights. So let's jump into collaboration. So this is like the traditional problem that most teams have is coordination. So as you can see right here, this animated GIF is kind of showing you an example of how your teammates are probably coordinating to pick out which space to work from today. So it's just a bunch of back and forth, like like in the chat somewhere saying like deciding on a space, and once it's settled, they all would check into, or at least hold the seat for that particular day. So what we did here is that on the Croissant app, you can see, you just make it a bit bigger. You can see that there is a team section here. So when you click on the team section, what's going to happen is that you're going to see your entire team and where they're actually checked in for that particular day. For example, me and Zoltan, right now we're at Nomad Works in New York. You can see that, there's a conference room booked. You can see that there are, the team members in that particular space, how many available seats. So other team members can also join when you actually do co-work together. And then also you can see future bookings as well. Like tomorrow, I'm gonna be at the farm, And if there's any members that want to join, they can visibly see their entire team in this tab. Cool. So the next topic I'm going to talk about is more on team structures itself. Like, we understand that, for Croissant, how organization structures, it's important so that they can kind of manage their co-working co-working program correctly. So as you can see right here, there are many ways to categorize different team structures. It could be based on roles, based on departments, based on locations. And what we did here was that we made it a little bit easy to kind of define that. So as you can see right here, this is the, zoom in a little bit more for those with smaller screens. As you can see right here, you can see that on the Croissant team portal right here, you're going to see the list of members on the right side, and you can kind of create your own teams itself. For example, I have some examples where it's based on locations. Some of them are based on roles, and but I'll create a team right now. So let's say that I want to create a EMEA team, right? And you can click whichever color that helps you identify this team a bit better. So let's say it's created art. There's a little bug. I think let me create another one. Southeast Asia team. So there's like a little orange here to create that. So for the C team, Southeast Asia team, you can click here. There's no team member added. You can kind of select the particular team member here, and you can click drag and drop. And when you actually drag and drop over here, you can see that I'm part of this Southeast Asia team. Now, why is this important? Well, this is important so that we can kind of, based on different teams, we can apply different policies. So let's say that for this example right here, is that, as Olsen said, like some companies have a headquarter, and what they want to do is that they want to promote their employees to kind of use headquarter as much as possible, but there are situations where the remote team is not able to commute that far to headquarters. So what they'll do is that they'll provide the distributed work program for these remote workers. So as you can see right here, we essentially will have a headquarter, and it's kind of blocked off, and then whatever is available around that area, they can use that space. Cool. So for policies, you can kind of go through this tab right here and click on policies. And the policies are kind of structured based on the different teams. For example, we just created this C team, and we can kind of create a policies. So we can click this button, create policies, and there's three different types of policy you can create. One for co-working, one for conference room, and one location-based. We'll kind of go through the location-based itself. We'll click on the locations here, and this is more of like permitted. We have permitted and restricted. So let's say that I want to restrict itself. Let's say that I have a headquarter in Midtown Manhattan, and I essentially want to prevent any usage within this area here. And you click next, and you can choose your different enforcement. You can essentially say that I want to warn the team member that this is out of policy, but they can still use a space. You can block, essentially that will prevent the member from actually using the space. And the third one is that you can ask for approval. So essentially the team member will request for approval, and then the admin will get that notification, and then they'll approve it. So we can kind of click create here. And as you can see right here, I'm kind of out of policy. As in, you can see that over here, like currently right now, I'm checked into Nomad Works, and it'll essentially say that I'm actually out of policy because I'm actually working in a space in New York itself. And let's create another one just to see. So what we can do is we can stack different types of policies. For example, let's say that for your distributed work program, you can essentially say that I want to allow only 20 hours per week per team members to actually use, So you can click here, and we essentially would have it where it's just a warn right here. And when that's created, is it will show that with however like many team members in this this group, it will essentially say that all members are compliant because I haven't used more than 20 hours in for this week itself. Now, what will this look like when it comes to how the member actually uses it? So when they actually go through locations here, you're going to see that there's going to be a lot of required approval just because, I essentially restricted all of these co-working spaces because I want them to kind of use HQ. But there are some spaces that are outside the range here. For example, new work, that we can allow them without approvals. But when you actually click through a space, let's say I want to click through Studio, it's going to ask them to request access. Once you request access, the admin will get a notification, and then they'll approve it, and then the member can kind of try again to actually check into the space. Cool. Now, the next piece that I want to talk about is more on insights. So team insights are a little bit interesting because it kind of provides a little more visibility of how your team members are actually using the space. For example, right now, we serve like co-working spaces, conference rooms, but also we provide more visibility on like what days are the most popular time to actually use co-working space. When is conference room mostly used, and then I'll kind of go into the demo. So let's go back to the Teams tab here. You can kind of click on the insights. On the insights, when you click on that, you're going to see this dashboard here. You can see that throughout this entire quarter, we used roughly around 429 hours of co-working, 24 hours of conference rooms. And on the bottom, you can kind of see some other metrics of like understanding like what is the busiest day we normally co-work. So it'll be on a Tuesday. What's the average time we actually spend in a space? 1.8 hours. Normally it's much higher. But normally for us, we normally test our application, so we normally check in, check out. So that's the reason why it's a bit lower. And we can see how many active members we have on this particular organization. The next piece here, also you can adjust it based on like month, on a yearly basis. So you can kind of see the different trends. Next piece of information is interesting, which is locations. So locations for Croissant, we're a distributed team. We have teams in New York, we have teams in Barcelona, team in Poland, team in London as well. So we can see that throughout the entire month, these are the most popular spaces we normally use. For New York, for me in Zoltan, since I live more on the southern part of Brooklyn and he lives more in the northern part of Manhattan itself, like we tend to alternate between these two spaces. And that's how you're able to kind of see like what's the most popular space. also, you can see that some spaces that one of our team members in Barcelona uses this, and she goes to pretty much, all the different spaces around Barcelona. And the next use case is one that we're kind of excited about, is more on um, use cases. So for us, for Croissant, we've logged roughly around like 3 to 4 million hours of co-working. So we kind of have a pretty good idea of how our members are using space. And because we have this team feature now, we can identify whether or not a particular member is also working in the same space as another team member. So we can kind of calculate whether or not they're actually using the space for collaboration. So we have 5 different types. We have focus mode. Essentially, is going to show whether or not a particular member is actually at a space by themselves. They'll be attributed to focus mode. Travel work, essentially, members are kind of working outside the scope of what they're normally working at. So let's say that we're in New York, and if I were to use a space in Tallinn, Estonia, then that'll be considered travel work. And collaboration is when, for example, me and Zoltan were working at a space together today. So that'll be contributed to collaborations. Meetings, essentially, booking conference rooms, that will contribute to meetings. And then there's team gatherings. These are a little bit more rare, but it does happen to some larger enterprise accounts where there are like larger team gatherings here. And how we attribute that is majority of the team members are actually using the space at the same time. So those are the 5 attributions there. Cool. So the key takeaways is that we kind of went over collaborations, how define members, organization, how we can structure your organization on Croissant, policies, how you can set different policy programs on Croissant, and also insights where you can have visibility of how your employees are using the space. Cool. And I have one more thing to kind of show, a bunch of AI, but I wanted to kind of we've been kind of exploring how AI can be beneficial for our use case. So we built a little bit more of like a MCP server that connects to your different AI clients, and also we built a Slack as well. So let's say that can you find a space to work? Kind of hope message both of these. And what this is doing is that it's actually communicating with our system. I'm already logged in on Croissant, and as you can see that, it's essentially trying to generate another way to kind of use Croissant. So you can use like your chat clients here. You can use Slack. As you can see right here, it provided some options. And normally we try to provide a space that I normally used. And let's say that I want to go to this space. This space. Okay, and this is for the Slack itself is kind of running the same system as what we had for what we have for the Claude. Sorry, for Claude Desktop. So it will ask me to it would confirm the space Thursday 16th at 10 a.m. And let's click yes. So it's reserving the seat right now, and perfect. And that was it. That was pretty much reserving the seat. And as you can see, let me go back to over here. If I were to, let's see, refresh this page, I can see that my space is, I'm booked for this space at 10 a.m. for tomorrow. And I think that's it. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Victoria, for the Q&A session.
Thanks so much, Adam and Sultan. Brilliant session there. If you've got any questions, please do drop them in the chat. Just looking through here. Right, we've got one question for Zoltan here. So can you talk a little bit more about where your spaces are? This person has a small remote team in Poland and would love to know more about your plans in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, fantastic question. So we have locations across 59 different countries and hundreds of cities. As it relates to Eastern Europe, we actually just kicked off our Poland expansion, I believe, this week or last week. So we're going to be going after supply in I believe Warsaw, Krakow, Gdańsk, and I apologize, I'm going to butcher this name, Szyslan. And then we also, I believe, added some additional spaces in Riga. So, I think the important thing is if you have a remote team and you're based out of Eastern Europe, generally our processes and how we work with teams is we do an audit of where your employees are, we match it with the supply, and then if there's any gaps, we aim to fill that for you as well. So you're going to start to see, like, as it specifically relates to Eastern Europe, you're going to start to see some supply being acquired in Poland, in Riga, and some of the more northern countries over there. But if you have a gap that we haven't filled yet, just let us know and we're happy to fill that.
Great. Thanks so much, Sultan. And another question, this is off the back of your AI presentation, Adam. So this person's asking, what AI chat clients are currently supported, and is there a roadmap for additional integrations beyond Slack?
Great question. Since we built our infrastructure based on like the model context protocol itself, any chat client that supports that will work. I know there's a couple of ones that Perplexity, like we also have Claude. Claude supports it. There's OpenAI does not support it yet. But yeah, those are the ones I've kind of tested on. But any client that supports an MCP server should be able to access Croissant. And then number two is that currently right now we built our Slack bot on top of Slack. And there's another chat client that we're interested in integrating with. That'll probably be Microsoft Teams next. That'll be somewhere, in our roadmap.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Another question's just come in from a digital nomad, I'm assuming. So this is for Zoltan, and the question is, does Croissant still offer individual memberships for employees?
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. That's a great question because we don't want to make it clear we're not shutting the doors on individual memberships, not at all. So yes, we are going to continue to offer them. It might, the location of where you're going to be able to find it might change on the homepage, but it'll still be pretty obvious as to where you can go through it. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much. Right. Let's see. I think we've got time for one more question before we wrap up. Adam, this one's for you. So this person's asking, do you have any integration to any SSO provider like Google or Okta?
That's a great question. Well, I guess working from an enterprise, company before, we do use Okta, and we do foresee like we want to make it easy for team admins to kind of invite, their team members to Croissant. So we'll be definitely be working on an SSO like integration shortly. So that means that if anyone that signs up for Croissant and we know that you're coming from this particular team, you should be able to self-register. And it's just like a less manual work for a team member to kind of manage adding new members. So yes, it's on our roadmap.
Oh, Fantastic. Thank you so much. If there's any last minute questions, do drop them in. We'll see if we've got another minute. But in the meantime, a huge thank you to Zoltan and Adam for your time and for such a great presentation, for answering all of the questions, all of our questions. We really appreciate your time. This webinar was recorded, so we'll share that with you very soon and send that all out to you along with all the information and a bit more details on what we've shared. Fernando's just dropped a link to booking a demo, so please do book a demo with our team. Like Zoltan said, we'd love to buy you lunch. We'd love to meet you and get to know a little bit more about you and your team and what you need. So yeah, thanks again for joining us. It's our first one. We'll have another one in 2 weeks' time on the 29th of April, and we'll send out more details for that soon. So thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks.